So after the whole Milo riot thing, I went on Stefan Molyneux and gave an interview. But other than that, I haven't really talked too much about the incident or my thoughts around it or why I was there, things like that, on this channel. I've kind of talked about things peripherally related to it, but haven't addressed that directly. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about that topic because it's it's been kind of an interesting path. So hopefully you guys find it interesting too. Um, so I have a very long history, or at least I think about as long as I could possibly have, as a free speech advocate. I'd say certainly since high school. That's probably about when the major thing started because that was the first time that I butted heads with an institution that had power over me over a free speech issue. Long story short, my First Amendment rights were violated by the private school that I was attending. And some of you are probably saying, aha, but it's a private school. They don't have to follow the First Amendment. Not true. Not true in the vast majority of states. I think there are First Amendment protections federally, regardless of what state. But in any event, I was in California, and in California, it doesn't matter if the school is public or private, there are particular First Amendment protections for the attendees of that school. So this is not this is not a new thing for me, right? I've been involved in this for a long time. Usually butting heads with institutions, usually coming across things where, people are saying, oh, this or that speaker should be banned, this or that book should be banned. In general, my concern is when people are arguing that, some speech or some work of fiction or some work of nonfiction, whatever, is just straight up too dangerous and should be completely banned, the way that Germany completely banned some books, the way that a lot of countries, the First Amendment freedom of speech is not even it's not even a Western civilization concept, right? I mean, it's pretty exclusively an American thing. We have it, and basically no one else does. So all the more reason to protect it, in my opinion. I think it's pretty essential to kind of the American vision, even apart from Western civilization as a whole. So, yeah, it definitely concerns me when people, start to talk about just ideas being too dangerous or speech being too dangerous or something like that, that we need to keep it locked down. So, pretty much from that time when I first ran into it, I took it upon myself whenever something was legitimately banned or, someone was threatening to ban something, I would consume whatever that was. If it was a book, I would read it. If it was a speaker, I would go see them. That kind of thing. And no one ever beat me up over it. I mean, it was a troublesome thing. It could be a stressful thing. It meant I didn't get along too well with my administrations at various schools, but it certainly never felt like it was a risk, right? It wasn't. I didn't risk getting expelled from the school, even realistically. I certainly didn't risk, bodily harm in doing that. I ran into the same thing in university. There's an organization that I've supported, I think since their founding actually, called FIRE, Foundation for Individual Rights in Education, which I highly, highly recommend checking out, and I'll link below. But I donate to them, and they were actually hugely supportive after what happened with the Milo riot. So in my thank you video, they will be featured for sure. But yeah, so, FIRE does a rating for schools based on like speech codes and things like that, from like green to red, in terms of how bad their violations of First Amendment protections for students are. And the school that I went to at the time was rated red. And I, ran into some of that myself with a club I was involved in and a panel of speakers we wanted to bring in. So when, this stuff was kind of in the news with different clubs wanting to bring Milo onto campus and various schools having outrageous security fees and weird requirements and all this stuff, and everyone was outraged about it, I was a little surprised, like I often am, I guess, because this is not new. Is not new. And if anything, in a lot of ways, this is getting better. I'd say we didn't have something as immediate and obvious and centralized as Milo, right? Who got like so much attention focused on one person. To kind of really bring the issue into the public eye. But it was a huge problem for a long time, 10, 15 years ago. And FIRE I believe, put together in as a direct response to that. Protecting not only students, but faculty and others, members of the public and such. So to me, when Milo was going on his Dangerous Faggot tour and, some people were reacting kind of badly, but for the most part, it just seemed, schools were making it difficult. Maybe a lot of people were showing up to protest. They were trying to shame people, like attending the event, something like that. It kind of seemed like same old, same old stuff that I've been dealing with for a really long time. And I was absolutely determined to go. I was going to go. I had even decided before I actually became a Trump supporter, I had decided if Trump did another rally in California, I was going to go after what happened in San Jose. And I want to say in Burlingame also, there was something. But then, of course, after the primaries, what's the point of campaigning in California? So he never showed up again. And I didn't have to have that fight with my husband about whether or not I would walk into that situation. But this is the kind of thing to me, right? I mean, if the same thing was happening at Bernie rallies, I would go to that. If they're happening at Hillary Clinton rallies, I would go to that. I don't want to see people's free speech rights violated, period. And if they are, I don't, all this stuff I've been talking about of these books that I read that are too dangerous and all this other stuff, most of them are crap, at least from my perspective. They're not things that I agree with. A lot of time, growing up, sometimes they were on the right, a lot of times they're on the right, but sometimes they're on the left, and I would treat them exactly the same, because I think that both sides, should have equal protection. Hey, under the law, another American concept. Maybe comes from, I'm sorry, I don't want to steal that if that belongs to England or something. But anyway, certainly an American concept, if not originating there. So I saw what was going on at these schools with responses to Milo, and I was like, no question, I'm going. When he comes to Berkeley, thought about going when he was coming to Davis, but Davis is a bit of a drive from San Francisco, so decided to wait out for the Berkeley one since we were able to secure tickets. And then the Davis event came around, and it was going to have Martin Shkreli there, which also made me sad that I wasn't there, because that would have been fun to see. But then that was shut down with a riot, and I was like, really? That really happened? And, I remember thinking kind of like, I wonder how bad it was. I wish I knew someone who was on the ground. Maybe it's just the administration overreacting. Maybe the Davis police just weren't prepared for that. I would imagine people probably got bussed in for that. Probably a lot of the same people that ended up attacking us were going there. But it was just a big surprise to me that even happened. And then after that, there was the University of Washington incident where, someone ended up being shot. And I was hearing a report, mainstream media, of course, not covering very much of what was happening. But, a couple people who went to these events or tried to go to them, were on Stefan Molyneux's show. So I heard them being interviewed. And it sounded like, people would go and they would get in a line and they'd be semi-protected by police, but kind of vulnerable in this line. And then these rioters would throw bricks and stuff at them. Right. And then the issue with the shooting turned out to be kind of confusing, kind of complicated, but it was definitely someone on the right who shot someone on the left, and not clear if it was justified, and it was out in the crowd. I guess the guy wasn't actually attending the event or something like that. So it sounded to me like kind of a fluke at the time. So we were still determined to go, and, we're kind of looking at these incidents and trying to, assess, what could we do to try and be safe? And the answer is very little, because, in order to actually attend the event, and by the way, of course, they don't tell you this until something like 24 hours before, they make a whole list of banned items. So, legal weapons in Berkeley are pretty limited. Knives less than however many inches. Wasn't planning on carrying a knife anyway. pepper spray, mace, things like that, typical self-defense weapons. Those were all banned if you were going into the talk. And you couldn't have signs. Of course, the protesters could have signs. The protesters could have pepper spray, because if you weren't planning on going inside, then just the normal laws for like out on the street apply. You couldn't have cameras. So we had actually invested in a GoPro body cam, to, on the off chance, we didn't think it was very likely that something would happen, but on the off chance that something would happen, we wanted to at least have footage of it, of who was doing it. And that was banned, because you weren't allowed to bring cameras into the event. I actually was going to bring it anyway and was trying to think of a way to get around it. But then I ended up running down the battery, so we didn't have a camera on us for that. So essentially anything you could do to protect yourself, right? I mean, if other people are going to throw things at you or pepper spray you, like, we were like, well, maybe we should wear helmets or something so no one can like hit us in the head with a brick, while we're standing in line. Oh, wait, no, you can't wear helmets. Well, maybe we could like cover our eyes, in case someone sprays pepper spray, which turns out they did. Oh, no, can't do that. Protesters can wear goggles, protesters can cover their faces, protesters can carry signs and weapons and pepper spray and all of these things. People actually going to the talk have to walk in, totally disarmed. So we got down there, and even from the start in daylight, I mean, it looked very different than what I expected to see. There were explosions already. The street was blocked off. There was a fire in the street. Nothing being done about any of this, of course. The police were just redirecting traffic, not arresting any of these people. But as far as we knew, the event was still on. So we figured, well, it's, a hostile crowd, but we don't see people getting beaten up. We're not seeing weapons around right now. And presumably we just need to find our way to the line, like they had at other schools, it sounds like. And once we get in that line, we need to just like be careful, make sure no one throws a brick at us, but we should otherwise be like reasonably safe. So that was sort of the plan. And then it turned, completely to shit, because there was no line. There was no instruction by police on where to go. Not that we could hear. And, the doors were supposed to open at 7. So we were like, well, it's not so bad. We'll wait and see at 7. Maybe they'll open something. If nothing opens at 7, we're out of here. And unfortunately, something like, 5 minutes to 7 is when they decided to, the, Antifa types, whatever they were, decided to do their black bloc tactics. So kind of line up and march in a way where, because of the police barricades, we couldn't really go anywhere. So we were stuck up against these barricades while they marched past us, past our only lines of retreat. That didn't involve climbing over the barricade, which we felt we weren't supposed to do because the police put it up. So then the madness kind of ensued from there. Not what not at all what I expected to see happen. Obviously it's propaganda, of course. But one of the popular pushbacks is, people only would have been there if they were looking for a fight. Well, we were holding tickets for the event. I don't know what else you want from us, right? We were holding tickets for the event, and we were following the rules to attend the event. And, we weren't armed, and like neither were the other people with us. One girl with us was in high heels and a skirt. I mean, I don't think she came looking for a fight, right? And part of it is like so much violence happened after this point that I think people kind of mush it all together and forget about the timeline and forget what an escalation this particular event was. Especially in Berkeley, because then after this there were a number of rallies and stuff where violent things went down, and at that point it's like, well, yeah, after this you should expect that these things are going to be violent, because obviously the police aren't willing to contain it, aren't willing to do their jobs, but at that point this was a new thing, at least in my assessment. So, and secondarily, my husband was almost beaten to death in front of me. I as much as I pride myself on going out and standing up for free speech, um, that is that's certainly not something that I would willingly walk into ever, ever, ever. So so basically after that, where did this leave me? I am not following my old policy anymore. I'm not going to see speakers that people try and ban as a matter of principle. It's too dangerous. And that is a very, very sad conclusion to come to. But I don't know what else a sane person can conclude at this point. That said, the fight's not over. Aside from the lawsuit, this is why I started this YouTube channel. I, was quite content to live my sort of quiet life and put in my support here and there where I can and donate to organizations and donate to the people who are speaking out about stuff I consider important. That was my life for a really long time. And now that, I've kind of been thrown into the middle of this war for a free speech, I guess, in a much more literal way than I expected or than in the past. Now I'm putting my voice out there, instead of putting my body in harm's way and crossing my fingers that it gets filmed and then crossing my fingers that it actually gets media attention and, hoping I don't die in vain or something like that. I'm going to keep speaking myself and doing all the other stuff, right? And supporting things and, doing whatever I can. And I certainly hope that the day comes back soon where I can just go to these events, where it goes back to, it's just upset, stuffy housewives or something who don't want witchcraft in their books. I don't know. I want that to be the free speech battle again, instead of this very, very literal battle that we have right now for honestly not terribly controversial beliefs. I mean, as I keep reminding people, I'm older than I look. I'm old enough to remember when, these radical positions that Trump is taking were pretty mainstream Democrat positions, right? In the 90s. And, I get it. The Overton window shifts or whatever. Maybe that's progress. Maybe it's not. But these are literally the same people who are alive at both of these points in time. And, we're having this public debate somehow about we should hold George Washington to the standards of 20th century or 21st century morality. But for some reason, we're willing to forgive Hillary Clinton for a whole career in politics, basically advocating for everything Trump now advocates for. Some of it were more anti-LGBT than Trump, who's really not anti-LGBT at all, versus versus that literally same person today, somehow not being held accountable for their beliefs in the past. But somehow George Washington was supposed to be, hella woke. So, it's all insane and it's all propaganda and there's not a lot of thought behind it. And that's why people are resorting to pepper spray and bats and beating people unconscious and all of that. I mean, what could you really have a better sort of symbolism, right, for the anti-free thought and the anti-mind aspect of this violent radical left-wing movement that we have going on than the fact that they beat two men unconscious just for going to listen to another man speak. So there you go. So I'm gonna still be here and I hope you guys will be here with me. Bye.